Welcome back, everybody, to the Marketing Rules podcast. And it is my pleasure to welcome on board Alexandra Chirica. See, I got it right.
You did.
Alexandra, it is a pleasure to have you on board. We have been back and forth about this for months, right? Trying to kind of get you on board. Partly my fault, but mostly yours, I think. Basically, rebooking in again and again and again. But we're here now, right? We're here now.
We've made it.
We made it. For anybody who doesn't know who you are, they're probably living under a stone anyway, because you're quite kind of, you've got a good personal brand on LinkedIn. But can you kind of give us a bit about your background and what you do now?
Yes. So, as James said, Alexandra Chirica, you did say that right. I fell into recruitment, as most people do, back in 2017, and I worked in an agency for 3 years. And then in June 2020, I launched my own recruitment business focusing on financial crime and fintechs. And then this year, I launched Recfindr, and I've stopped with recruitment, and I'm now in the tech space.
Was that a jump? Was that a real wrench to kind of like, had you always had kind of like a tech brain, or knew you wanted to go down this route? Or was it just something that was like, there's a potential gap in the market here?
It was definitely the second one. I found a problem. I was like, okay, this problem isn't going away in my head. Slept on it for 6 months. And then I said, yeah, fuck it. We need to do this. But I'm very much a non-technical founder. So no piece of coding knowledge whatsoever.
And how have you found building it without the kind of tech knowledge that some kind of tech founders have, who they tend to then build it out of their bedroom themselves and they code it themselves, and then it starts from there. Yeah. You know, how was that kind of finding developers and people to work with and people you can trust to build this on your behalf, and not necessarily speaking the same language to a certain extent either as well?
Yeah, I think I definitely went in very green, and it was a lot more expensive the way that I did it, but I think it was the way I needed to do it in order to learn about it. So I went to an agency in Birmingham, and because I knew nothing, I put all of my trust into them, and they did a great job, considering I had no idea, and they were trying to learn from me what I wanted built. And I remember the funniest part was I came to them with like 4 bullet points of a specification, and they just looked at it and they turned it into 150. And they really taught me how developers think, what they need, and how to communicate. Like I remember I asked one of them to move a text box further down, and they literally moved the text box without the writing inside it. So they're very, very, tunnel vision, very specific. It was completely my fault. I didn't give him the right instructions. So I learned a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there is that kind of perception that developers are pretty literal, right? And if you don't really kind of aren't as specific as possible, then they're just going to do what you've asked for, basically, right?
Which is fair. Yeah.
And sort of most kind of tech businesses that I know of and I've kind of worked with might have outsourced that to the Far East somewhere, or I don't know, maybe kind of Eastern Europe somewhere, or something like that. You stayed in the UK and decided to spend a lot of money doing it that way, as opposed to kind of going down the route that a lot of kind of tech businesses go down, which obviously for cheaper, apparently so.
Yeah, I mean, I think moving forward, I would go to Romania to do it. It helps. I'm Romanian, so there's no language barriers. There's nothing there. I can take a couple of trips home as well to see the future team. But I think initially I wanted it to be somewhat close to home, because if there's a breakdown in communication, you can just drive up and see what the problem is. So it just felt more like a safety net, which for me was, I guess, worth the expense when you really have never dealt with developers before.
Yeah.
But yeah, in the future, now that I've learnt more, I still know nothing, don't get me wrong, but just a smidge more, I'd probably do it differently.
And how much of a learning experience has this been for you? I mean, you must have picked up some kind of technical know-how, and you must speak the kind of the similar language to your developers now, right? So you're much more aware of how to inform them and get the best out of them?
Yes
You
and
can say
no.
no. You can say no if you want.
I I get very heavily involved on the design and front end aspect. That part, 100%, because I know what I want it to look like and feel like, and I do get involved in from that point of view. And I've learned, what it's hosted on, the tech that's been built. I know all of that stuff, but God forbid you ask me, I don't know, was it using Python or something? Like,
Yeah.
I had no idea. I should know a lot more about it, but I could never look at a piece of code. I remember when they showed me, hey, Alex, we've built the first half of this, and it literally looked like Matrix code. I'm like, what are you showing me? I'm so confused. I was genuinely worried. And then they said, no, this is normal. There's no front end to it yet. So I was like, okay, I'm learning. I can take a deep breath. It's fine.
And you've already kind of mentioned kind of one mistake is, because there's going to be other tech founders listening today, because we do get a few kind of people like that around. What are the other kind of mistakes that you would avoid if you were doing it now?
Oh, what mistakes would I avoid?
You may not have made any mistakes. You may have done it. May have been completely perfect, right?
God, I'm still learning about my mistakes every single day. I think if I were to do it again, I would I would create an MVP first. Definitely.
Mhm.
I didn't do the MVP first. I built something bespoke from the very beginning, and touch wood and thank God that we got the research results that we wanted. But to invest so much into something without having done a very cheaply produced MVP initially can be very, very expensive. So I think that was the biggest risk that I took for sure.
Okay. So with your background in recruitment tech, in being a recruiter, in running your own recruitment agency, we're going to kind of move on to kind of having a chat about what I thought we could kind of chat about today, which is um, recruiters and their marketing, and really not doing it particularly well, and getting it confused with just putting stuff out online as opposed to something of any kind of real value. And I know you've got some kind of thoughts on this, so you've been there, you've done that. Um, Talk to us about kind of recruiters getting kind of marketing confused with fluff.
Um, I think, don't get me wrong, I started out with fluff back in 2020. That's exactly what I did. Whenever I felt like it, once a week, I would just post something to the masses that I wanted to mention about CVs or helping people. But then what I learned very quickly is that there's a system here, there's an approach, there's a way to change this where it turns into more of a sales funnel instead. And whether that's gated content, whether that's benchmarking exercises, things like that, that can be funneled into almost a product led business
Mhm.
rather than the standard recruitment business model. And then I realized, okay, this is not just fluff. It may be the initial thing that you see on the surface, but actually there is a system to all this content that people put out there.
Mhm.
And I think when some recruiters hear about personal brand for the millionth time on LinkedIn, they're just like, ugh, I don't want to post a video. It's like, you don't have to post a video. You can just think of a different sales funnel,
Mhm.
and it's almost reframing it.
Isn't though the potential issue with that let's take LinkedIn as an example, is they kind of want you to post fluff, right? LinkedIn likes it when you post stuff that's not really work related. I mean, the amount of posts now we see on LinkedIn, which are might be considered as personal posts.
Yeah.
We don't get as many of the. I know this is usually what I would post on Facebook post, but there's a lot more dog photos on LinkedIn as an example, right? Um,
Yeah.
so isn't it just kind of where the algorithm has kind of led us to kind of be a bit more fluffy with some of that content?
Yeah, but I think fluff can be useful
Mm.
because what I say about having a systemized approach to it is Sure, let's say you post regularly and the algorithm likes that, and then you get more and more likes and impressions and this and whatever. But then what do you do with that information? If you leave it dead, then that's how it's going to remain. But if you look at who's liked your posts, are you connected? Are you not? Then maybe you should connect. Maybe if they're relevant, drop them a message like, oh, hey, you liked my post. Maybe blah, blah, blah. You can have a conversation. And then you can keep those people that regularly like your post into now a mailing list because they engage with your content. So it's kind of moving them through the channels. But fluff is the thing that's going to get you the attention. But then it's how you're using that
Yeah.
that actually makes a difference.
Yeah.
So I do think fluff has a place.
And with the kind of as you mentioned, you mentioned personal branding and that LinkedIn is kind of covered in it. You yourself, though, have got quite a big kind of personal brand. You've got quite a kind of a good following, and I particularly like your videos. You've got some really nice, well, kind of
Thank
like
you.
constructive videos. They're obviously professionally done, and they look great. For someone maybe who isn't kind of going to go down that route, right? You know, myself, for instance, I've got versions. I do some that I do on the phone, and I've had some kind of professional ones. Um, what is it you think is going to work best, right? So whether it's kind of fluffy, whether it's added value, whether it's more kind of professional, from the stuff that you put out, what is it you see that's kind of working at the minute?
I know not everyone feels comfortable with these, but the videos and the TikTok formatted videos now, because I know they added that function in, right, where you can scroll on it. And I think videos always get the most engagement usually, but I know that's not for everyone at all. And I think you can work your way up to it though. Like I saw someone the other day who just launched their own agency, and I've never seen them post before, but because now they have their own agency, they was like, oh shit, now I have to post. And honestly, it was hilarious. It was so sarcastic and true to his persona that he said, I'm not going to be posting about dogs. You don't need to know my morning routine. And I was like, you have no idea how good this post actually is because you're just showcasing an element of your personality. And I think that's what people kind of want, whether it's through video, written, whatever your format is, there is a way that can suit anyone.
Yeah. And how do you find it trying to blend the stuff that the marketing you're doing with kind of Recfindr and the stuff that you do kind of personally? Is there, do you kind of keep the two separate? Do you blend the two? How do you kind of, you know, make that kind of marriage work, as it were, or do you not want it to work?
Oh, so that's a really good question. I guess I can't really change my personality, but I can filter out what I put on LinkedIn versus what I put out on Instagram. So the stuff I put on my Instagram is definitely more laid back. It's more, friends, and like I posted my solo camping trip and shit like that. It's
Mhm.
definitely a lot more personal. But um how I react or comment to things is still very much the same, whether it's professional or whether it's on Instagram. And I don't. Did you see the recruitment horror stories that I did for a
Yeah.
little bit? So those ones, I think that one I was kind of towing the line because it was relevant enough for it to be on LinkedIn, but it was funny enough for it to be on TikTok and Instagram and other social channels. So I think I found this really nice line where I could actually post it everywhere. But there's definitely things on LinkedIn I wouldn't put on my Instagram because it doesn't make sense. So
And do you kind of bring in Recfinder as a brand into your kind of personal stuff as well, or and vice versa? So the stuff you're posting on your personal kind of LinkedIn, do you put it onto the Recfinder kind of pages as well? And is do you have the kind of the problem that a lot of kind of small business owners have, that you are known and maybe the brand isn't as known as much? And this is something I've try to tackle with at Thinking Circles, whether it's me or whether it's the brand or whether it's both, or
yeah,
is there do I really should I really care? Um, you must have this kind of same as well, though, right?
absolutely. I think because Recfindr is so new as well, I don't expect people to know about it. But at the same time, I don't actually see an issue with me being more known than Recfindr, at least in the very early stages in the first couple of years, because I am sales, I am marketing, I am Recfindr. I don't have a choice until I have a team of 10 people where it's now almost both. Like, it's okay for people to still know me and my personal brand, as long as there is that funnel that kind of leads the right people into Recfindr. But you're right, I did have this problem with Tail, so my recruitment business, because recruitment is very, very different. It's more about relationships. So then if I hire people into Tail, but everyone knows me, they'll want a relationship with me, not necessarily with Tail and my other employees. And I think that's where recruitment is so different as a business model, because you're not product led. It's very much a human led business. So I think it's different from that point of view. But what do you think?
I think it's difficult. I think whether it's recruitment, whether you're a small kind of tech business owner, when you're a small team and you wear different hats, and I always talk around kind of, as a founder, which hat you're wearing on which day.
Yeah.
You are sales, you are BD, you are marketing, you're sometimes accounts, you're sometimes admin, you're sometimes kind of making the tea and a cup of coffee. You're doing a bit of everything. It is difficult to kind of extricate yourself from being separated between you and your brand. I've found that time is the thing that can make the difference. So
Yeah.
just being around and having the business known. We made a kind of a conscious effort and tried to do more around the rest of the team. Basically, whenever we were posting on LinkedIn, there was more kind of team members, and it wasn't just from James. But there's no getting away with it. I'm the one who's probably the most gregarious and probably always will be within the business. And you'll probably have exactly the same, I would imagine. That it's still always going to
Yeah.
kind of, and you may even find this as well, when, as Recfindr grows and you might be looking for funding, people are probably more likely to invest in you as necessarily than Recfindr. Not saying Recfindr isn't a good business, but they'll probably go down that route, as in, because they know that
Absolutely.
you've got a reputation, you've got some talent, and it's them that they're going to invest in you, as opposed to the brand in initially anyway.
No, definitely. I mean, everyone says this, right? Especially for your first round, that it's very little about the product itself, but it's more on the person, and do they believe that you're the one to do it, if they know that you can do it.
Yeah.
So it's actually not a bad thing.
No, I completely agree. I think, if whatever gets the money in the door, right? I guess, you know what I mean. If
Yeah.
it's you, they're going to invest in, whether it's the product, it doesn't really matter, right? Whichever they have faith in is just is equally as valid.
Yeah.
But I guess it's what, again, it's the kind of trials and tribulations of being kind of a tech founder, as a tech kind of advisor and an investor. It's interesting to kind of see these similarities between kind of businesses, and you're heavily in with other kind of founders in this space. So you must have these kind of conversations pretty much on a regular basis when you see them. You must kind of struggle with the same things around building a kind of a technology business, that it's just you, it's just the brand, et cetera, right? So,
Yeah.
is there anything around that you would you think you could offer to other founders, other tech founders kind of listening in, that might kind of, be listening and think, yeah, I've done that, I probably shouldn't have done that, or et cetera.
I think that the biggest thing that I've done in the past 6 to 7 months, it's a lot harder than it sounds, but is getting out of your own way entirely. And, ask people for their advice, ask for help, ask for a coffee, just catch up. I've never had so many coffees and face-to-face meetings as I've had in the past 6 to 7 months. But it's so, so important to not feel siloed, because I remember talking to my best friends who all have permanent jobs and permanent employment. I'm like, I can't tell you any of the things I'm really dealing with, because we won't be able to relate much. And I remember messaging one of my founder friends and saying, listen, please, can we just go for lunch? And she felt exactly the same. Like, oh, we both sat there and we could just have it out with what we're dealing with, not having to sell. There was no pretense. There was none of that. It was just fucking hell. What are we doing? And it was a shared moment that is so important so you don't go crazy. So I'd say make your own community. And if you can't make your own, find one. There's lots of different founder communities and they take time.
Yeah. Before I let you go, talk to me about Recfindr, right? Because we've mentioned it a few times, but we've not actually mentioned what it is and what it does and how it works and who it's for. So give us the pitch for Recfindr, so everyone listening in can check it out.
Yeah, so phase one of Recfindr and what we've built, it's a marketplace for employers and hiring managers to go and match with the right individual recruiter that specializes in the niche that they're looking to hire in. So specifically for early stage founders or VCs and accelerators that are looking to build out their portfolios teams, it's speaking with the right specialists. So I tend to liken it to Bumble, the dating app, where hiring managers go first.
You probably should do something around that, right? There's a marketing campaign there, I think, isn't there? It's the Bumble for recruitment, or something like that. And where can we find the details for this? What's the URL?
www.recfindr without an E, dr.co.uk.
Recfindr, basically, right? Recfindr. Alexandra, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you today. If anybody wants to know more, we will obviously include all of your details in the show notes so people can follow you on LinkedIn, and catch up with you if they need be, if they want to know more about Recfindr. But for now, thank you very much.